I have no issues in the basement, living in the dungeon that I'm in right now.
This is episode 9 of Ruminate. Ruminate is a podcast about the opportunities and challenges that technology presents us with every day. I'm your host, Rob Lewis, and with me as always is John Voorhees. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm very, very well, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm recovering from eating a whole hog last night.
To yourself, or did you share it with other people?
I did share it. We had about a dozen people who went out for a holiday party last night to a place called The Frontier in Chicago, in a part of Chicago called Westtown. And they roasted a pig for us, about a 25-pound pig or so, and then a whole bunch of really good sides, mac and cheese and cornbread, and we had some fun punches in giant jars that you could, full of ice that were really tasty. It was really good.
Yeah, it sounded. You sent me a picture last night, I think, and it made me hungry, definitely.
Yeah. Seeing the whole hog right there sitting by your table is turned some people off, but it doesn't bother me. They made quick work of that hog too. They took that thing and carved it up really quickly, and so they just bring plate after plate of different cuts from the pig, and it's barbecued. It's smoked over like applewood and whatnot, and it was tasty. The one part that was the one part that did turn my stomach a little bit was when they brought a special platter over on a wooden cutting board, all pre-chopped up, and it was laid out as you would expect. It was the pig's face. Oh. And so you had the 2 ears, the 2 eyeballs, the snout, all sliced up. Oh, I almost forgot. Between the ears, there was the brain. And then the cheeks. And I did not have any of that. But on the platter, too, were 2 shots of whiskey. And so the thing to do is to eat the pig's eyeball and have a shot of whiskey. And they did find 2 takers in our group. And it turned my stomach a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely not something I think I'd be partaking in. I'll stick for the standard parts of the meat.
Yeah.
But as you say, I've been to a couple of weddings over the last few years where they've had a really nice hog roast, and it's just really good when it's done properly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was a freshman at Duke, when I was going to university, they did one for the entire freshman class. It was huge. The thing had to have been 100+ pounds. It was maybe 6 feet long. It was huge, and they cooked for 36 hours or something. But it was really good too. That was a long time ago, though.
Well, let's not get into that now. We don't want to.
No, we won't.
We don't want to reveal the time, do we, John?
No, it was years ago.
So you've caved, John, haven't you? And what have you ordered? Come on, admit what you've done.
I know that I said I wasn't going to order it, but I ordered an iPad Pro because I don't know why. Because I can't resist. What really tipped it for me was the reviews of the pencil, especially the handwriting. I do a lot of marking up documents, PDFs and stuff, and I've never found that a stylus works well for that. It's just too imprecise. But especially after reading, I think I read Mike Hurley's review on the Pen Addict, and maybe 1 or 2 others, and it looks so good for handwriting that I just couldn't resist. And there are a lot of days too when I don't want to carry my Retina MacBook Pro, which is pretty heavy, and I think this will serve me well for when I'm doing writing and other things like that.
So you're getting that. You've got the 15th here, so it'll be a couple of days. So Tuesday, is that right?
Yeah, Tuesday it's coming to the house. Then I was trying to. One reason I almost didn't order it was that I couldn't find an Apple Pencil anywhere. I mean, I went to a couple Apple stores, then I got wise and stopped going to Apple stores and calling Apple stores, and then I was told things like there's not an Apple Pencil within 100 miles of Chicago, and then. Someone on Twitter told me a few days ago that Best Buy was getting a big shipment of them and that you could order them online for in-store pickup. So I ordered one, and I'm getting that Wednesday the 16th. So there's a Best Buy downtown that I can stop in and pick it up. But I still have one on order with Apple online, and that's not supposed to come till mid-January at this point. And there's just none in the stores as far as I can tell. I was told that people are lining up and when it opens to get the one or two that might show up that particular day at any given store. It's been a real problem.
Yeah, it's the delivery dates in the UK are kind of the same, like middle of January, end of January, that kind of thing. And you kind of look on eBay and there's people with like 15 or 20 of them, and they're selling them for double the price because they've clearly just gone into the Apple store and ordered all of them. It seems like maybe there's kind of a little bit of fake demand from these people, the scalpers on eBay and stuff like that. But even so, you should be able to get one, within a week should be reasonable.
Yeah, I really didn't expect it to be so hard. I figured, we have a really big flagship store in downtown that doesn't have any, and then one near my house in the suburbs. And I didn't expect that it would be this hard to get one. I have seen pictures of people who found them online and found 10 or 20 in their local Apple store, but they're not around here at all. And I guess I suspect Best Buy must have already had some kind of commitment from Apple for a certain number of them by a certain date, and that's why they're getting them before any of the Apple stores around here. Yeah,
that sounds about right. At least you're managing to get one, and you can. I'm sure we'll be talking about it. Not in the next episode because we've got a special episode, but the episode first thing in the new year.
Yeah, definitely. The big question now is whether I wrap it and open on Christmas or just start using it next week. I suspect I'm just going to start using it next week.
I would be very, very surprised, John, if you had enough will to wrap it up and keep it for another week.
Oh yeah, it would be pretty hard. I did get the SD card reader, that new SD card reader. I haven't really used it yet. I tested it out with some photos I already had on an SD card, and it worked. It works with the the current generation iPhone. It's nice.
Yeah, it's a nice. I'm surprised that hasn't been. They had one previously, didn't they? But am I right in thinking it didn't work with the iPhone?
That's correct. I think it only worked with the iPad.
Yeah, which is a bit strange. Clearly, that's a software thing, not a hardware thing. But yeah, it's a nice little accessory if if you need one. I guess that would be another option for me. We spoke about SD cards and things like that, and
yeah, the iFi, right?
And I think that's a decent alternative to something like an iFi card.
Yeah, no, I think what it'll be good for, especially, is going on vacation without a laptop, and maybe you do bring a camera that uses an SD card. You can offload and it's effectively back up your photos to your phone or your iPad without having to bring a laptop. And then do some editing, maybe post them online, whatever. Without having to deal with a laptop. Yeah,
definitely. So moving on, we've got some follow-up from Chris. We were talking about slim wallets last week, and he wrote in to tell us about the few of the slim wallets that he's tried, some that are part of an iPhone case and a couple that were, just slim wallets. And he's got a blog post, or he's actually got 2 or 3 blog posts that he's he's tried out a few of these different slim wallets. And I know you've tried quite a few as well, haven't you, John?
Yeah, I've tried different things. The main one that I've used is called the Cinch, and you can get it either as, it's really just an elastic around a card in the middle, and you slide in your cash or your cards around the sides of this this card that's in the middle, that gives it structure. And they have ones that are either a piece of wood, or you can get one that's stainless steel with a little cutout in the middle that you can use as a bottle opener. That's the one that I've used, not surprisingly, and it's really good. I've enjoyed it. The only thing is that the elastic has gotten kind of worn over time, and they don't have any replacements. So I was looking at another one, which we'll talk about later when we talk a little bit more about Kickstarter, that looked like a little bit better implementation of a similar thing, but that Kickstarter has been canceled. So I think I'm going to stick with what I have for now. Yeah, what did you look at these other two here?
Yeah, I've had a look at a few. Again, you mentioned we're going to talk about Kickstarter in a minute, and I've seen a few on there, and the ones that Chris sent in. They look nice. The kind of minimal wallets, it's not really something that I'm particularly interested in. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of variety. I think you can jump on Kickstarter any given day and find 10 or 20 different projects that are creating these slim wallets.
Yeah, I think it's solving to some degree the problem. The problem is what you're carrying, not which wallet you're using. You know what I mean? Because I think part of the problem I find is like, well, my wallet's too big again. Well, it's because I've crammed too much junk around, my inside my minimalist wallet. It's not the wallet's fault. It's my fault.
Yeah, definitely. I see people kind of talking about, oh, here's how you can slim down your wallet with our magic new wallet. But in reality, if you're carrying around 20 different store cards and credit cards and bank cards and all this kind of stuff and receipts and whatever else people keep. So I try and replace store cards with the iPhone apps or Passbook if I can, just so I don't have to carry those around.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do the same. Some people feel compelled to carry everything they've ever been given in the shape of a card in one spot, which I don't do. I mean, I usually have an ATM card, a credit card, and some cash and my ID, and that's about it. Although that kind of burned me a little bit this past week. I had my credit card number stolen. Someone was charging things in Mexico to my credit card. And so I found myself out with my ATM card for some reason wasn't working in the ATM I was using. I had very little cash and my credit card was frozen. So that can happen, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. So the last note that Chris had actually in his follow-up, he said that you need to be very selective on Kickstarter, which leads us into our topic of Kickstarter. And I think to start with, that does make a good point. I think it's kind of easy to just get caught up in, the nicely produced videos and look at this, give us $10 and we'll send you it, whatever the product happens to be. And this is half the price of retail and things like that. And it's easy to get caught up, just kind of backing everything that you find that you think might be interesting. But yeah, I think I kind of follow Chris's advice that I try and be fairly selective in what I back.
Yeah, I had a Kickstarter problem for a while, it seemed like. I mean, I was backing a lot of stuff, and then I realized that it really wasn't that smart. So I basically deleted the app, stopped getting the emails, and now if I hear about something that's really gotten some traction, I'll take a look at it. But I'm super selective these days.
Yeah, it's kind of the same as me. I just kind of wait, and if I see a lot of people tweeting about it, then I'll check it out. Talking of ones that are gaining traction, we talked about the paint drying movie that's going to get sent off to the classification board. Mm-hmm. That is now, as of maybe 20 minutes ago, that is up to 13 hours, 10 minutes, and 54 seconds.
Wow.
So so that's gonna be a fun couple of days in the classification office.
Yeah, they're gonna have to paint a couple of walls because it doesn't take 13 hours for paint to dry.
No, definitely not. But yeah, I think this is a fun project, and the fact that it's kind of got over the original kind of planned 4 hours is it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of cool.
So you mentioned a minute ago about a Kickstarter that got cancelled by the owners. But you've popped an article in here about there's a journalist is investigating cancelled and failed Kickstarters, that kind of thing.
Right. The one that I was involved in that got canceled is not this one. It's a different one. The one I got involved in is the wallet one, and it's what they were going to do is do a minimalist wallet using titanium, and they had some prototypes and it looked like it was working. And then they got some metal. They tried it out, started production, and found that the metal was cracking. So instead of delaying it significantly, they just canceled it and said they would come back when they got the metallurgical issues squared away, which I think is probably a good way to do it. That's got to be very hard if you're doing that sort of thing. This is a company that already had done Kickstarters and already had similar versions of this wallet online. So it wasn't like their first time with a lot of sunk money. They were just using it to kind of ramp up a new version of an existing product. So it was canceled, and it was a little disappointing because it looked to me like it was a little bit improved version of what I'm already using, and I wanted to try it out. But I'll keep my eye open, and hopefully I'll have get to use that again soon. The other one, though, the one that's been commissioned, the article that's been commissioned, is that there was a drone project in Europe, and I assume that this was not limited to sales in Europe, although it was described as a European Kickstarter. I don't know if Kickstarter limits itself geographically or not, but it was the biggest one that ever had been funded in Europe, and and it failed. Nobody ever got their stuff, and I don't recall how much it raised. I think it was like 2 or 3 million euros, something like that. Yeah,
it was 2.3 million pounds from 12,000 backers.
Yeah, and it failed. So Kickstarter has actually commissioned a journalist to investigate it and write something about it, which is interesting because from their perspective, I think they felt like it would do the entire community of Kickstarter a service to know what went wrong here and how it can be avoided in the future, both from a producer standpoint and from a consumer's standpoint in terms of the backers.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this brings us on nicely to something that I felt has been a problem with Kickstarter for a while. So for example, in that scenario, it's a kind of miniature drone that you can control with your phone and stuff like that. And their original target was not $2 million. So their original target was £125,000.
Oh wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot more.
So that they've gone a significant amount over that. And maybe in this scenario, obviously we'll find out when this article gets published. But my problem here is, they only want 125,000 to get this going, but they don't. There's no kind of upper limit. They just keep on getting backers more and more over the kind of 30 or 45 days or whatever it is. And I feel like in a lot of scenarios, this is actually what causes the problems. Is instead of having to make, say, 2,000 of these drones, they've got to make 50,000 or 100,000 of them. And clearly they weren't planning on that, because otherwise their goal would be a lot higher.
Right.
And a good example of this, not quite the same, but the Pen Addict did a Kickstarter a while ago to send Mike out to the Atlanta Pen Show. They were going to record a live show and do a kind of little mini documentary about it, and video the live show, that kind of thing. And one of the rewards was you could get you could get a pen case,
right?
Which was not, that's a kind of perfect for the Pen Addicts audience. But what they did was they limited the amount of pen cases they were going to make. So they couldn't have ended up making 100,000 of these if they got that many backers. Like, there was a limited amount. So their final goal didn't go, or their final amount funded didn't go too much over what they'd originally asked for.
Yeah, they effectively self-imposed a limit on it, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they only had, as far as I'm aware, they had 2 reward levels. There was $10, which was just to get the video when it came out. And then there was $35 to get the pen case and obviously the video as well. And they limited that to 300 backers, and that was it.
Yep. No, I've got one of those pen cases. It's really nice.
And I think that to me is a good way of doing a lot of these campaigns, because obviously all those pen cases had to be manufactured. They had to be made, and if they had done 1,000 of those or 1,500, it could have taken months or even a year or so to get those out.
Yeah, you run into scale issues for sure, and then that becomes a delay just because of the number of items you're making instead of any problems with the actual process. Yeah, I know. I tend to agree with that too.
Yeah. So, how many projects have you backed, John?
Well, I have actually. I went back and looked. I was surprised. I've backed 25, which is more than I thought I had. And it's definitely, I think if you plotted them out on a graph, you'd see that there's a big spike in the first year or two, and then it slowed down substantially. How about you, Rob?
I've only done 11. I tend to, back with what we were saying about kind of being selective, I will tend to only back a project if I know it's going to get funded and I can kind of know that I'm definitely going to get the product. I really pick the ones that are very, very low risk. In terms of me giving them money. Yeah,
well, no, I definitely, especially these days, try to look for people who already have some experience in what they're making. Like I said with the wallet, I mean, this was a company, even though it doesn't always work because this one obviously got canceled anyway, but it's a company that was already making this product in a different kind of metal. So, you figure that there's at least a reasonable chance that they'll be able to follow through and produce it. Same thing with, Priority bicycle that I got. That's the most expensive thing I've bought. I bought a bicycle, commuter bike. Yeah, and it's great. I love it. It's what's kind of cool about it is it's belt driven instead of chain driven, so you don't have to deal with keeping the chain greased and everything, or getting it on your clothes or all those things. It's designed to be super low maintenance. And for really just commuting, because I go down, I either walk or ride that bike down to the train station, every day, about a mile or so. And the bike is a great way to do it. Sometimes I run errands around town on it, look like a little bit of a goofball, but it's kind of nice, get a little exercise.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a kind of perfect example of something that that I think is great for Kickstarter, because there's maybe not a huge market for something like that, but for the people that do want it, you can give them the money, they get the project done, and then they can do a small run that they can sell afterwards, and they can kind of build the business from there.
Right, and that one, although it was risky in the sense that it was more expensive. I think it was like $350, which is pretty reasonable for a bicycle. But the person who was the company that was doing it, the guy who was in charge of it, he had a lot of experience in the bicycle industry. So there were definitely risks in terms of manufacturing and whatnot. But I think that, it was a little bit low risk only because the person had experience in the industry to begin with.
Yeah, a couple of my favorites were I've done a lot. Most of mine are books or documentaries. And two of my favorites were a couple of books. The first one was the Sega Mega Drive collection, which was a series of original artwork from the Mega Drive. The Sega Genesis, as it's called in the US, I think. But it was a series of kind of concept art, and they did loads of interviews with people who made games for the the console and things like that. And that was a really nice final product when that arrived. It's a really huge book that they'd piled a lot of money into it as well. Like the extra money that they raised, they used it to get better paper and color photographs and things like that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do at the original Target.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It looks like a really neat book. So my favorites, the Priority bike that I got, that was this time last year. The Cinch wallet, because I've been using that for well over a year. I like and then the app, The Human Story, which is a documentary that is still in the works right now, coming out fairly early next year, I think. They previewed a little trailer teaser at XOXO this year. They first started working on it right around the time of WWDC 2014. So it's been going for a while. They didn't do their Kickstarter till after WWDC, I think, if I remember the timing right. But they were there at WWDC in 2014 they were there at the taping of the talk show and a bunch of other venues, and that's when they did some of their early interviews. And from what I've seen, it looks really good. They've got a lot of really interesting people, both iOS, Android, other people, designers, developers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was one that I've backed as well, and like you, I'm pretty excited to see that get finished. And again, like you say, I think when they've already done a lot of the work, and actually the Kickstarter is just to be able to make it better and do some extra interviews and things like that. I think that's good. That's a good way to use this kind of backing. Whereas if they hadn't done any of the work, it might not be so easy for them to calculate what kind of money they need and how long it will take and that kind of thing. But yeah, that seems to be progressing along quite well.
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to mention about Kickstarter, this is one of the other problems I have being in the UK, is that a lot of the Kickstarters are US based, and the shipping for some stuff, especially kind of bigger items, it is huge. I could be looking at like $40 or $50 for shipping, which obviously can add a lot to the price, and then I may get caught with custom fees as well when it comes into the UK. So I've actually avoided a lot of projects because of that as well.
Yeah, I would think that that's a problem that maybe Kickstarter should think about trying to solve. Whether that means they get into the distribution business or what. I mean, it's definitely a drag on Kickstarter, I would think, because it really restricts people to their own geography.
Yeah, it's something that it's frustrating for a lot of things. Like, there's been some Apple Watch docks and iPhone docks, not necessarily on Kickstarter, but just sold in the US that I've not ordered, because if I had ordered them, they basically get doubled in price by the time I ship them here and things like that. And the custom fees are so all over the place that you really just don't know if you're going to be charged or how much you're going to get charged. And some of the carriers add their own charge on top of that. So it's just kind of difficult to work out what I'm going to actually pay in the end.
Yeah, I kind of suspect that some people actually charge more than they need to on international just because they don't want to be bothered. They're willing to ship it internationally, but only if people pay a lot in order to do it. Kind of reducing demand for having to deal with international shipping by charging too much.
Oh, definitely. And I think that also helps with not having to do returns and issues and stuff like that. Yeah, I think you're probably right. They're probably just charging a little bit too much to stop me, or to at least put me off from ordering.
Right. So
our next topic is, I made a claim on Twitter, didn't I? Do you want me to? Shall I read the tweet?
Yes, tell us what your claim was.
So the tweet reads, "Mark the day. If Apple remove the headphone port next year, I'm going Android."
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I was like, what is he talking about? You're not. It was a weak moment, Rob.
No, I stand by it. I still stand by it now.
All right.
So this, if for anyone who doesn't know, this was a rumor that came from, I don't even know what site it came from at this point.
I think it was on 9to5 Mac, maybe.
Okay, so this rumor came out that Apple are going to remove the standard headphone jack from iPhones next year. And, people were kind of all over the place. Some people were like, it doesn't matter, Bluetooth the way forward. And then there was people like me who were like, nope, that's it. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing it. And I have calmed down a bit now. But I feel like the frustrating part for me is that, and we're going to get onto this in a little bit, but like Bluetooth headphones, I just don't think are quite there yet in terms of, in terms of sound quality, battery life, and kind of just being kind of cheap enough for either for Apple to ship them or for people to just go out and buy third-party ones. I mean, decent Bluetooth headphones are certainly not cheap compared to standard wired ones. Right.
Yeah, I kind of fall into the camp of I just don't care, and I'm not sure. I mean, we should explore this. What is it about not having Bluetooth is part of it, and I do use Bluetooth headphones, so maybe that's one reason I don't care. But I do use wired headphones, like with my laptop and occasionally with my phone. But why do you care if they take away one of the holes in the bottom of your phone?
So the reason I care, presumably they will still ship some kind of headphones with the iPhone, whatever that is, a new version of EarPods or whatever.
Right.
And of course, the rumor says not only will they remove the headphone jack, but headphones will use the Lightning port for headphones. Which there's a few third party ones that use Lightning now, but they are in the kind of $800-900 range.
Yeah, they're very expensive.
So my problem is, I get these headphones from the iPhone, and they use a Lightning port. That's great. They work with my iPhone. But if I want to then use those with my laptop or with a stereo or, anything else that has, a standard headphone jack like I'm using now, I'm going to need some kind of stupid tiny adapter to use that.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I guess part of the reason I don't care is because, one, I do use Bluetooth headphones, so I rarely am using the 3.5 millimeter jack in my phone. And then when I'm using headphones with something else, I'm using different headphones. I'm using some Sennheiser PX200s that I have with my laptop, and that's the only times I'm really using headphones. I don't use headphones 90 to 95% of my headphone use is with my phone, and it's by Bluetooth.
Yeah, so I can see that, and actually we've been chatting throughout the week and actually for quite a while about Bluetooth, and I decided this week, I was like, right, I'm going to find out what the best Bluetooth headphones are, what ones can I buy so that I can have some Bluetooth headphones now, and I checked out the Wirecutter, and they've got kind of a list, and there's a couple on there. There's the Jabra Move and Jabra Revo are the two that they seem to recommend. And the first place I checked was Marco Arment's headphone review, and he said the sound was terrible. He really didn't like the sound from these headphones. He said the controls on the side of them, they've got some weird kind of touch-based controls. He said they weren't very good. And I kind of looked around, and I saw some people go, yeah, these are fine if you want Bluetooth, but I feel like there's a lot of kind of accommodating because they're Bluetooth. They're kind of like, yeah, these are fine for Bluetooth headphones, but they're not good in comparison to a lot of wired ones. And then so I finally came to the conclusion this morning, and I've ordered just some standard wired headphones. I've ordered the ATH M50X, which seem to be recommended kind of across the board there. Marco Arment's second best in his list. MKBHD recommends them. Wirecutter recommend them. So yeah, I've ordered those, and they're coming tomorrow.
Yeah, and those are standard over-the-ear kind of indoor use type headphones, right? These aren't like the kind you'd necessarily walk down the street using.
No, I mean, I will, but yeah, I kind of get your point. Like they're a little bit big for kind of portable use.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm showing my bias there. You can definitely use them outside. They're just they're not earbuds though, I guess is what all I was trying to get at.
Yeah, these are big kind of over-the-ear, over-the-head headphones.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with Bluetooth from my perspective. I've been using it for about a year and a half or so, and not having the wire is such a huge benefit that I'm willing to kind of compromise on the sound, particularly since I'm using them in environments that are noisy anyway. So, if I'm walking out on the street or on a train or something, it really doesn't matter that much that the sound quality isn't great because there's a lot of background noise. And a lot of times I'm listening to podcasts, which may or may not have the most wonderful sound in the world. And even if they are well recorded, it's in a relatively tight, vocal range. You're not listening to music where you're trying to get really high highs and really low lows. I do listen to music on them, and I absolutely agree that they're not the best in the world. But not having that cord is kind of life-changing. I mean, I kind of analogize it to having the Apple Watch, because with the Apple Watch, you get your notifications right on your wrist, and you don't have to pull your phone out of your pocket. And it seems like a small thing when you say it like that, but it is a pretty big thing, especially like here in Chicago in the wintertime, as it's starting to get really cold here. I don't have to yank my phone out constantly when I'm getting buzzed. I just take a quick look at my wrist, and if it's something important, I can deal with it. But 9 times out of 10, it really isn't. And I can see what's going on, whether it's, I'm getting a tweet or you're messaging me on Slack, and I'm not going to interrupt myself until I'm somewhere warm and to respond to you. So, the watch changes things pretty dramatically in terms of notifications for me. And having Bluetooth headphones does something very similar, because all of a sudden, you don't, you listen to I start up Overcast. I have my podcast in the order I want. They just automatically go one to the other. I keep my phone in my pocket, and I walk along, and I don't have, I don't I don't get that cord snagged on my bag, or when I sit down in the seat in the train where it hooks on the back of the seat in front. I mean, I don't have any of that stuff anymore, which used to ultimately destroy my headphones, because I go through headphones probably once every 6 months or so, at least, especially when I had wired headphones, because I'm just not careful enough with them, I guess. And I end up eventually ruining the cord at some point, because it gets yanked here and there, and the wires start disconnecting.
Yeah, I can kind of, I completely agree with you, John. And you've mentioned to me in our Slack before about, not having a cord is great. And but the problem I have is that it would be great for me, when I'm going to work and coming back and things like that, if I'm out and about. But when I get to work, I'm not going to use Bluetooth all day while I'm sat in front of my computer. You know, I have my headphones on pretty much for the whole kind of 8 hours or whatever that I'm at work.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't do that either.
No, and I think that was... I kind of just want to be able to have one pair of headphones that I use while I'm out, as well as kind of at the office.
Right.
So, you know, these are ones I've tried for now. Ask me again in a year, maybe I will have changed my mind. I mean, maybe Bluetooth headphones will you know, presumably will get better over the next year or two. You know, so hopefully, you know, the ones I've ordered will be fine for me, and you know, Bluetooth will get better, and I'm sure I'll change my mind in a year.
Yeah, it's definitely just obviously a different use case that you've got than I do. And it works pretty well for me just because it's a commute thing more than anything else. And if I'm using my laptop, I use my Sennheiser headphones with those because they're a little more comfortable too. And the sound is way, way better than the Bluetooth headphones. Part of the problem is the technology too. I think we're just, you know, Bluetooth is kind of lousy for it. We have, with wireless headphones, you have to charge them. The sound quality, I think, is limited in part by the Bluetooth technology itself. You know, range and connectivity are sometimes issues. Those are all things I'd actually welcome some sort of proprietary wireless standard if Apple does that, that makes it easier to get better connections and better quality sound over wireless headphones. There's some intersections that I walk through in Chicago, and I don't know what's emitting the radio waves, but I get interference at certain intersections, which is really strange to me. But it's just the way it is with Bluetooth, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to guess, you know, Bluetooth has the advantage that it's not just on the iPhone, it's on other devices. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, Bluetooth isn't a great standard for this, and you know, maybe we could do with something better. But right now, you know, Bluetooth is what we're stuck with.
Yeah, it's gotten a little better over the last couple of years, but I mean, that's why I finally went for it. Combination of Bluetooth improving and better battery life. Like, charging them is a pain, and I do carry earbuds with me as a backup in case they die, but that's only happened a few times. I mean, I charge mine probably like twice a week, maybe Wednesday and Friday, sometimes a third time over the weekend. And it doesn't take very long because they're not very big batteries, and they'll last for a couple of days worth of commutes for me.
Yeah, I think, again, like, battery is another, you know, concern. I mean, for your use case, yeah, great. You know, you can charge them once every couple of days, but you're really only using them for your commute.
Right.
I really don't think we're at the point yet where somebody like me could, you know, leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, use them all the way to work, use them all day at work, and then use them to come home. That would be hard, I think. I think that would be a little bit of a stretch for some of these headphones. I mean, a lot of them claim between 8 and 10 hours, but from what I've been reading, that's not necessarily the case, especially if you're using them constantly.
The over-the-ear ones, I'm sure, have longer battery life. I'm just using earbud-style ones, but I would think it would be really hard to get a full day's use, especially kind of end-to-end, you know, door-to-door from your house. Yeah,
definitely. So what Bluetooth headphones are you using right now?
Well, right now I'm using the Plantronics Backbeat Fit, and probably the best thing about them is that they seem to be pretty rugged. You know, the jury's still out on these a little bit because I've only had them about 3 months. I got them in September. What I don't like about them is the controls are a little fiddly. The controls are on the earbuds themselves, so when you're putting them in your ears or adjusting them, it's very easy to accidentally hit the controls. I've gotten good at not doing that, but I kind of prefer having the controls on the cord itself, which some other ones I've had do it that way. But Plantronics is both somewhat reasonable price. They're around $100 on Amazon compared to some of the others, and they seem fairly rugged so far. They haven't broken. In the past I've tried the Jaybird X, which is recommended by a lot of people. They were fine, but they just stopped working one day, and I'm not sure why. I mean, I do use these for exercising sometimes too, and I think that can be pretty hard on Bluetooth headphones, even if they're supposedly designed for exercising. I think they've got a new version of those called the X2, which I have not tried. The X were fine, but they didn't last that long, and they were $130. And then I tried the Beats Power Beats 2 wireless. And I kind of like those in that they do the over-the-ear thing that keeps them in place pretty well. A little better than the fiddly wings that the Jaybird X have that you have to kind of try to jam inside your earlobe. But the Power Beats go over your ear and then around your neck, and they've got a little adjustable cord so you can get a pretty good fit. But the controls, which are on the wire themselves, the pause and volume up and down, the rubber on it just gave at some point and tore, and they're expensive. They're almost $200. So I wasn't going after those died. I wasn't going back to those. So I've been using the Plantronics for, like I said, about 90 days, and so far so good. But they've got to get past the 6 month stage at a minimum for me to really recommend them, I think.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just another kind of factor of the fact that Bluetooth earbuds and headphones just haven't been out that long. Like, it's a relatively new technology, and I think they want to get the cost to a decent price, but they need to have decent batteries and things like that. So maybe the materials and stuff aren't so good at the moment because they're trying to keep the costs down, so that they're actually affordable. I mean, like you say, the Beats are $200, which is a lot of money for kind of in-ear headphones.
Right.
So again, I think this is probably going to shake itself out over the next year or two. Especially if Apple remove the headphone jack, then it's really going to have to shake itself out quite quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm at the point where I have considered going back to wired and going back to really just the ones that come with the iPhone. The EarPods, which the original earbuds just didn't work with my ears. I found them really uncomfortable and they tended to fall out. But the EarPods work a lot better for me, and I think the sound's better than the Bluetooth headphones. So I really don't mind using those, and I may go back to those for a while and just experiment with trying wired again.
Yeah, I really like the EarPods for what they are. They're just kind of the free headphones that come with iPhones. I mean, I do go through them quite quickly because I kind of just throw them around in my bag, and I only really use them if it's raining, which is probably half the problem. If it's raining, I don't want to use my nice headphones, so I get the EarPods out. But yeah, as you say, they're significantly better than the ones that they used to come with. Because again, like you, they were just really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and the EarPods are $29, so you can't really beat the price. And if you do go through those every 6 months or so, it's a lot easier on the wallet.
Yeah, definitely. Do we want to quickly mention this hideous battery case that Apple released this week?
Oh yeah. There was a lot of talk, probably too much talk about this. This is the new battery case for just the 6 and the 6S that looks like it swallowed an iPod Touch or something.
Yeah, it kind of looks like kind of old cartoons where a snake would like eat a human, and you can kind of just see the outline of it on the back.
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think, as you say, there's been a lot of talk about it, and I've kind of relaxed a little bit since I first saw it, and I've had to think about it a bit more. It's not particularly nice looking, but there was a good discussion on ATP this week, and I think John and Mark, I made a good point. There are no good-looking battery cases. Like, they all look terrible.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely function over form, and I was kind of shocked to see it too, as most people were. But thinking more about it myself and seeing that some of the features it has, which is that it doesn't have an on-off switch, and you just can kind of slide it in without it being two pieces, and it and the other integrations that only Apple could do with a battery case, I don't have an issue with it. I mean, if I'm not going to get one. I don't have a 6, but if I were to get, I could see definitely getting one of these for things like being on a long trip, being on a long flight, or being at a conference or something like that. I usually bring along a battery pack. Those have their own limitations because obviously you're tethered to something, but that's worked pretty well for me in the past.
Yeah, that's what I have as well. I think I picked one up when there was an Amazon Lightning deal. It's not it's not a particularly good one, but I've used it when I've been if I go into London or something for the day and I'm out from early in the morning and stuff. I've used that, and like you say, it's a bit annoying to be tethered to it, but the battery pack that I've got is pretty thin, so I just kind of plug it in and chuck my phone and the battery in my pocket and just get on with it, and it seems to work pretty well. So
yeah, same here.
So, should we talk a little bit about Copycat Apps? This was something that you've come across this week, and actually I have to a certain extent as well.
Right. I mean, copycat apps are not, they're not anything new, and unfortunately, and they are policed by Apple, but not particularly well. I was looking for just to download. I had, on my phone, I had an app called Screeny, which is an app that lets you, it basically detects the screenshots in your camera roll, and gives the option to delete them and save some room and clean up your photo roll. So I didn't have that on my iPad, and I was so I went to download it. I typed in Screeny, and I found that there are 4 Screenies. There's Screeny Pro, Screeny, I don't know, there's Screeny Pro TM, trademark. There were 4 different ones. Let's see, here's the picture. It's there's Screeny, which was the real Screeny, Screeny Pro, Screeny TM, and Screeny Plus. And they all had very nearly the same icon. At least 3 of them, the icons were almost identical. And then the screenshots were very similar, both in style and layout. So I looked at it, and I knew exactly what I was looking for in the store, and I was confused as to which one of these was which at first. I thought, oh, Screeny Pro. I didn't know they had a Pro app. Maybe I ought to take a look at that. I realized, well, that's not their app. And I guess from reading an article that the developers put on Medium not long after they released Screeny, this has been a problem that they've had since the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, you sent me this screenshot when you found it, and I think, or you tweeted it as well. Yeah, you tweeted it, and I think you sent it to me as well. And you said to me, like, which one is the real one? And I honestly wasn't sure. I mean, the only giveaway for me was the fact that the real one had some ratings. That was the only giveaway for me, that was the real one. Because I haven't used this app, so I've got no kind of prior knowledge of which one is which.
Right.
And I think that's probably the problem that we're getting at here, is that if I say to somebody who doesn't know about it, oh, you should download Screeny, that'll do what you need to do, and they search for it, they're just not going to know. It's far too difficult.
Yeah, I have no idea how you can get why there can be 4 apps that are called the exact same thing. A made up word, Screeny. Why it's okay to have 4 apps with the exact same name. I mean, I understand that there's limited namespace and there are going to be apps that have similar names, but 4 with the exact same, almost the exact same screenshots and the exact same name is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is blatant. These are blatant rip-offs. This isn't a coincidence that 2 people have made an app called Screeny. All of these screenshots look identical. The icon, as you say. This is something that Apple. I feel like Apple should maybe do something about it, because they decided that they are in charge of the App Store. They police it and they stop apps getting in, and yet this is the kind of crap that gets through.
Yeah, and there is a process. There is a place you can go and complain to Apple Legal about this. And I asked the Screeny developers if they had, and they said they did originally when they first launched the app, and that it never really went anywhere. But they were contemplating going back and trying again. I would hope that it would be fairly easy to get rid of all 3 of these apps there, because they're so close in style and name. But it is what it is. I mean, you've got some experience with this, dealing with because you've been watching the Apple TV apps, and that's starting to pop up on Apple TV too, right?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a joke, kind of, maybe just between me, but I've kind of been laughing about this since I've started looking, since the Apple TV came out. But if you search for 2048 on the App Store, there was maybe 20 probably a week or 2 ago. There's another 5 or 10 been added now. And Flappy Bird rip-offs is probably the wrong word, but games that are called Flappy something. Like there's Flappy Salmon in there, or there's Mr. Flappy. Like there's so many apps that are just desperately trying to hope that somebody will search for Flappy Bird and think that their app is actually Flappy Bird.
Yeah, they just want to ride in the coattails of something successful. And Flappy Bird is actually one where there is an example of where Apple did crack down, because once Flappy Bird took off, there was Flappy everything for a while, right? And everything in the charts started having Flappy in it, and Apple started denying those apps at one point.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly did it, as you say, when Flappy Bird first took off, but you look at this screenshot from the Apple TV store, and I mean, this is like a quarter of what I could see on the screen. I just took a screenshot through Xcode, so I can only show you the top bit, but there was, maybe another 50 or so apps underneath this, and there's, right. Flappy Wigs, and, the awesome Flappy Pixel, Flappy Red Dragon. I mean, I'm all for variety and stuff like this, but this kind of crap, like, this just makes the App Store look bad.
Yeah, it does. It makes it look junky, for sure. The bar is very low. That much is obvious. So we have a couple articles that we'll put in the show notes. One is the Screeny developers post that I mentioned, and then there's also a good overview of the problem on Ars Technica from a couple of years ago, called "How App Store Grifters Clone an Overnight Success and Make a Quick Buck," which is what this is all about. So
yeah, no, those are both good, and as you say, we'll stick those in the show notes. So we've just got a couple more kind of little videos for the end of the year, which is nice. The X-Men Apocalypse trailer, which came out a few days ago.
What did you think of this?
Okay, I think I've said before, but I love the superhero movies, whether it's X-Men or the Marvel or not the new Fantastic Four, because that is just awful, but let's not even get into that. But these are great because you sit down and you watch them, and they're kind of just fun to watch.
Right.
But they did in Days of Future Past, they kind of, which was the previous X-Men film, they set it up at the end to what seemed like, this is going to lead into X-Men Apocalypse. And I thought, that's a really clever way of doing it. It's interesting. I won't spoil it for anyone, but what they seem to have done is just gone, do you know what? The timeline and characters that we've had in the previous films are completely irrelevant. Here's some new characters, and some characters that have already been in the films are now in this film, but this film is set 30 years before. So they've just kind of thrown the timeline out the window and gone, screw it, we're doing this anyway.
See, I didn't really realize that. Part of the problem I have with some of these movies is I tend to forget the continuity aspects of them, and I feel like I need to go back and watch them again to understand all the references, but you can't really anymore because there's so many of these now. And the X-Men is one that I like the X-Men, but I haven't really paid that much attention to it, so I didn't pick up on that other than I saw that there were different actors.
Yeah, I mean, the different actors is kind of reasonable because obviously this is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be set kind of 30 years in the past or thereabouts, 30, 40 years in the past. But from the trailer, like, Jean Grey is in this,
right,
which is fine, except she's not 70 or 80 years old in the original X-Men films. So she clearly aging doesn't affect her. But I'm still looking forward to it because I really enjoy all these kind of films, even if they are kind of samey at times.
Yeah, no, I like them too, and I mean, I have very low demands of things like this. I mean, I'm easily amused, and I just go to for a little escapism, so I don't mind. And I thought the trailer looked pretty cool. Yeah,
it certainly looks like a fun one. And you've popped a video in here that I did watch, but do you want to tell us about this, John?
Yeah, Stephen Hackett, I saw post this on Twitter a couple of days ago, and it's just something on Devour.com. It's a compendium of news bloopers from the past year. It's about 15 minutes long, so it's kind of long, but it's very funny. I mean, everybody's watched news bloopers before, but I thought this was really well done. It's a great way to kind of I don't know, laugh at the news.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, especially if you get the bigger stories, because you kind of go, that was in relation to that and things like that. But I think they've done this the past couple of years, and they're always pretty fun to watch. If for no other reason than it's human nature to want to laugh at people when they say a rude word when they don't mean to, or they mess up, that kind of thing. And that's pretty much what it is. But yeah, this is a nice fun video if you've got 15 minutes spare.
Yeah, I really like the guy when they cut to him live and he's in the middle of ordering a fish sandwich at McDonald's. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, and there's one quite near the beginning of the video as well where I think it's a BBC News presenter, and she's just kind of brushing her hair and looking in her bag, and then the music comes, and the camera kind of zooms in like it would, and she's like, right, okay, I suppose I best do the news now.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So I think that's pretty much it for this week. We do have a special episode coming up in a couple of weeks. We're probably going to release it probably Christmas Eve.
Yeah, this is the one where Joe Steele dresses up like Buddy the Elf and sings Christmas carols, right?
Oh, that's definitely it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, well, Joe Steele is now somebody we have to mention on all these podcasts. So, no, I contacted Joe. I said, Joe, can you get the Buddy costume out and sing us some songs, and maybe we'll do a video podcast for the first time? Unfortunately, he wasn't available.
Oh, well, forget it then. Shut it all down.
Maybe next year. But instead, we did a special holiday episode, which is special mainly because I'm not going to be around 2 Sundays from now. So we picked all of our favorite things from the past year and talk about them, and that's going to be coming out probably a little early compared to our usual shows.
There is one thing I want to mention because we pre-recorded the next episode. We didn't mention the greatest podcast episode of the year, which is the top 4 Christmas music episode, which features Tiffany and Marco Arment, who are the usual hosts, as well as Mike Hurley and his girlfriend Adina. And this is just such a good episode of any podcast. Like, this is the best episode of a podcast this year, without a doubt.
It was very funny, and that's probably what inspired me to talk to Joe. Which I actually really didn't do. If you hadn't noticed, I'm being sarcastic, but I just like to give Joe a hard time.
So we'll pop that in the show notes. That was the one thing I'm disappointed about because we pre-recorded, because we didn't get to mention that on the show.
Oh yeah, it was definitely one of my favorite episodes of the year. So if you haven't been listening to the top 4, you should definitely, if nothing else, I would start there. And I think that do you know how many episodes they've done? They haven't really done that many, so it would be very easy to get into at this point. I think.
I think it's only maybe 9. I think this was the 9th episode.
Yep.
But they're reasonably short. They're never more than about kind of 45 minutes or an hour long. So yeah, as you say, it's pretty easy to get into it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much the end of this episode. You can find me online. I'm at rmlewisuk on Twitter, and my website is roblewis.me. And John, where can people find you?
I'm at John Voorhees on Twitter, and you can find my projects at squibner.com.
And there we go. And this is the last time we'll be recording, so Happy New Year to you, John.
You too.
And we'll be back in the new year.